controlled. And that beast had the head of a lion, which represents not Britain, as I heard a gentleman say, but it represents Babylon. And if you took good notes, and brethren, if you want to understand this, you need to take notes, not merely write the scriptures. You need to take notes of the explanation that we have, because the same scripture can be used to explain different things. So if you merely write the scripture, then you'll have no way of knowing what is intended when you go back and you look at it. So please take good notes and take notes of the explanations. I was saying this gentleman concluded that since Britain has as its national emblem a lion, that the beast in Revelation 13 with the head of a lion represents Britain. And I think Daniel says, Daniel 7 or 8 says that the beast had wings of an eagle. And he theorized that since America has its national symbol as an eagle, the two wings on the lion represented America being broken away from Britain. And it said that it stood up like a man, the beast with the lion, it stood up like a man, and to him, the man represented Uncle Sam. So, now, that kind of silliness, brethren, is not, that is pure human speculation. The Bible shows us quite clearly that the lion represented the first king, which was Babylon. And it had the feet of a bear, and the bear represents not Russia, but it represented the Medes and the Persians, or the Medo-Persian army. The four heads of a leopard, they represent not four German rights, as another commentator said, but the Greco-Macedonian Empire that was broken up into four parts after Alexander the Great died. Remember, we pointed out that he was the notable horn. And it said that that horn was broken, and whereas it was broken, four stood up in its place. And that is how we got the four heads of a leopard. And since the empires were represented by animals, the Greco-Macedonian Empire was represented by leopards. And as I suggested, one of the reasons for that was that he had a fairly small army, no more than about 50,000 men. And he was able to conquer the Medo-Persian army that had about 1 million men under arms, and at one time he defeated an army of about 250,000. And in the coup de grace, they say, he defeated another army of 500,000. Now, how could 500,000 lose to 50,000? I don't know. But he did. So when his empire got broken up into four parts, his four generals, as it says, his four generals were Cassander, Lysimachus, Ptolemy, and Seleucus, and they broke the empire up into four parts and continued the Greco-Macedonian Empire. And the head, the last of the heads now, is 7 heads. The head with great iron teeth and 10 horns represented the Roman Empire. Now you may get a little confused with how does the whole thing represent the Roman Empire, as I say. The head with the 10 horns and the great iron teeth, that represented Rome as a starting empire. And when it grew great, it occupied all of the territory of the previous 3 empires before it. So we saw it now as one composite beast, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The 10 horns can also have a double meaning. It could refer to the fact that the empire will have 10 revivals, or similarly, There's also a reference to the final revival of the empire, which, as is represented by the huge man with the metals, with the feet and the toes, the 10 toes of iron and part clay, that the final revival of this empire will have 10 kings, as it says. But then we saw that this head, the head with the 7 heads and 10 horns, with the great iron teeth, it received a deadly wound. And the deadly wound was simply, and it was defeated militarily. The Vandals from North Africa came up from North Africa. They were a German tribe. And they came up from North Africa, which is pretty close to Italy. And they attacked Rome, and they conquered it. And Revelation 13 and verse 3 said, "And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death." And it gave another explanation later on. In Revelation 13 and verse 14 it says, "And deceives them that dwell on the earth, that they should make, by means of those miracles which he had power to do, that they should make an image to the beast, which had a wound by the sword, and did live." The sword is a symbol of war or military action. So the Roman Empire received a wound to the head that had the great iron teeth and 10 horns. And as I explained, the only head that really had life, since the other heads represented empires that had passed, the only head that had life was the head with the great iron teeth and 10 horns. So that is the head that was wounded to death. And therefore, since that was the only head with life, the beast, the whole beast, died, as well as the head. But it says, the deadly wound was healed in verse 3. And all the world wondered after the beast. Now, the deadly wound was, first of all, it started with the defeat by the Vandals. And the Vandals were displaced and later replaced by another German tribe, the Heruli. The Heruli were also displaced and were replaced by the Ostrogoths. So 3 German, considered barbarian tribes, occupied the territory. Not all of it, but at least it occupied most of Italy, where the real power lay in the Roman Empire. That was in the western leg. Now, there was another part to the east in what is today Turkey, called the Byzantine Empire, which was also part of the Roman Empire. And as we saw the statue with the man with the 2 legs, the eastern part, Constantinople in Turkey, western part in Rome. The western part, however, seemed to always have more influence and power than the eastern part. So today, Rome is still a city that has greater influence than Constantinople in Turkey. Partly, I suppose, because Turkey is now Muslim. And Rome retains the Christian aspect of it. So the deadly wound that was healed, the healing was the restoration of a Roman government back to the Roman Empire. The Ostrogoths were defeated by an emperor from the east, Justinian. he re-established the Roman Empire. But the empire was now different from the empire that it was before. Many refer to the previous empire as pagan Rome. When the deadly wound was healed, as I said, the beast that we saw in Revelation 13, with the 7 heads and 10 horns, head of a lion, bear, 4 heads of the leopard, and the great iron teeth, that beast died, and it is no more seen. When the deadly wound was healed, we saw a new beast emerging on the scene. Why? Because we now had the advent of the Holy Roman Empire. And while many of the structures and things were done, the appearance now of the Holy Roman Empire was now different, made it a different empire than it was before. And let's see some of the things here that the Bible describes in Revelation 13. It gives us a prediction and a description of what the beast, the Roman Empire, after the deadly wound was healed, some of the characteristics. It said in verse 3, one of his heads were wounded to death, and the deadly wound was healed. And all the world, note, all the world wondered after the beast. Verse 4, and they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? Now they worship the dragon. And some, because of the artist's depiction of what the beast with the great iron teeth looks like, some of them refer to it as a dragon. But Revelation 10:12 tells us that the dragon is the devil. And it says the devil gave this revived empire. He gave power unto this revived empire. This Holy Roman Empire, the Bible is saying, the devil gave it its power. That perhaps is one of the reasons why Christ will destroy it. And it will be it will exist at the time when Christ returns. And he will finally destroy this beast in his final revival. It says, who is like unto the beast? Who is able to make war with him? And there was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And power was given unto him to continue 42 months. So that this beast, you may wonder what was blasphemies. Well, the history shows that many of the emperors acted as if they were gods. And citizens under the empire actually worshipped the emperor. Power was given unto him to continue 42 months, which is 3.5 years. But this has a prophetic fulfillment. So, a day for a year principle is applied because the empire lasted longer than 36 months in the first place. So it could not be literally referring to 36 months. 36 months multiplied by 30, because the months as God gave them were 30 days. So we're looking at 1240 years. This empire power was given to him. So the revived empire was given a period of 1240 years to continue. And verse 6 says, and he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle, and them that dwell in heaven. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints. And if you read some of the book, especially the chapters in Acts, you see that Paul was, for example, imprisoned by the Roman Empire and was executed by the Roman Empire. Peter was executed by the Roman Empire. And a lot of the brethren were persecuted. The church was persecuted by the Roman Empire. It says, and it was given to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. And verse 11 introduces another beast. A different beast this time. It says, and I beheld another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb, and he spoke as a dragon. Now note the appearance of the dragon. So this new beast, and remember a beast represents a kingdom, sometimes a king, spoke as a dragon. He had 2 horns like a lamb. Horns represent governments. So that this beast had 2 horns. So it suggests it has a twofold application. It governs in 2 spheres. It says it looked like a lamb. The lamb is a symbol for Christ. So this new beast has a religious appearance. And also a civil appearance. It says, but he spoke as a dragon. So we see the empire and this new entity, the lamb-like beast, the dragon, are influenced by the dragon, who is the devil. It says, and he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. So this second power is able to exercise the power of the first beast, which was the civil power of the Roman Empire. In this case, the Holy Roman Empire. What made it holy? The emperors now profess Christianity. Justinian, who was the first one, he became a Christian. And many of the emperors subsequently were crowned directly by a religious person, aka the Bishop of Rome, that we now call today the Pope, crowned directly. So the Pope, the papacy, or the papacy functions in 2 spheres. It functions as the head of the Catholic Church, but it is also a civil government. The papacy controlled territory at one time. It still does today, but it doesn't have the same expanse of territory that it once had. Let me read to you something that I took from the internet, from the website One of them is Epic World History. It says, Papal States, in Italian, La Stato della Chiesa, from 754 to 1870, was an independent territory under the temporal rule of the popes. It was also called the States of the Church and the Pontifical States. The territory varied in size at different times. They said in 1859 it included 16,000 square miles. That's probably about the size of Cuba, or maybe a little bit bigger than Cuba today. So it was a significant piece of territory that it controlled. It says the Papal States were originally private property, owned and controlled by the popes in Rome. And after the 8th century, the term was applied to the Duchy in Rome and surrounding feudal estates. Constantine the Great, the first Holy Roman Empire, declared that the Christian Church was a legal entity in the empire. Included in this declaration were the rights of the Church to own and administer landed possessions. It says during the early centuries of the papal estates, lands in the provinces of Gaul and Africa were included. But this practice stopped as non-Christian Germanic tribes conquered these areas, the Vandals, etc., the Heruli and the Ostrogoths. Most of these properties were lost in the early 8th century, and by the end of that century, the German invaders also confiscated the properties in the Italian sectors outside Rome. All that remained were the lands in and around Rome, which were then owned not by the Church, but by the Pope. The Pope thus became the largest landowner in Italy. The revenues of the papal estates supported the Church in Rome, and the many monasteries, convents, hospitals, orphanages, and poorhouses in the area. In times of famine, it was the Pope, not the Emperor, who had the responsibility of providing Roman citizens with food and water. It says, after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, the Pope became the most powerful leader in Italy and in all of Western Europe. Even during the Ostrogoths occupation, the Pope was given control over the temporal affairs of Israel. The Ostrogoths was the last of the 3 German Empire tribes to rule during the period where the wound was sustained. And we remember in Daniel 7, the little horn that came up amongst the 10, and it says, before whom 3 of the first fell. And maybe we should go back and read this. Let's go back to Daniel. Daniel 7, and let's go from verse 19. He said, then I would know the truth of the 4th beast, which was diverse from all the others, exceedingly dreadful, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass, which devoured, broke in pieces, and stamped the residue of the remnants of those previous empires with his feet. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, and before whom 3 of the 10 fell. Even that horn that had eyes and a mouth, and that spoke great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. And verse 23 it says, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon the earth, the Roman Empire, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another king shall arise after them. But he shall be different from the first, and he shall subdue 3 of these 10 kings. And as I said, the 3 kings that who were subdued, they were subdued one after the other. They didn't exist all at the same time. The Vandals occupied Rome for pretty close to 20 years. And then they were displaced. And the Heruli occupied it for maybe another 40 years. And then the Ostrogoths came in and occupied for close to 90 years. So they were sequential governments. They never existed simultaneously. The inference we can take from this is that the 10 horns that represent 10 kings don't exist at the same time. They continue in the sequence. Let me read from a book called What is the Beast of Revelation? It says, some brief explanation of the German tribes, the Vandals, the Heruli, and the Ostrogoths, and their timing is helpful. In 455, the Vandals swept through northern Africa and eventually attacked and defeated the city of Rome itself. This tribe was so barbaric and destructive that the modern term vandalize is derived from their name. 21 years later, in 476, the Heruli under Odoacer established an occupying government in Rome. 20 years later, so we see the sequence. The kingdom of the Ostrogoths, which lasted from 493 to 554, in turn replaced the Heruli. And it says, like the Vandals and Heruli, the Ostrogoths were eventually driven from Rome, and together they represented what has often been called the transition age of the Roman Empire. The Ostrogoths were driven out by the emperor from the east, so we see them coming in sequence, not existing at the same time. So the idea that the Roman Empire is broken up into 10 parts is not a valid one. It means that they would be sequentially established. But once these 3 were moved out of the way, the implication is that there will now be 7 revivals. But those revivals we do not see in the beast in Revelation. It happens with the beast in Revelation 17. And we will get to that shortly. So, Revelation 13 here is establishing the connection now between the heel beast and this lamb-like beast. Both of them being influenced by another beast called, or another entity called the dragon. And as we've established before, the dragon is a symbol for the devil. So both the empire and this entity that, as we saw, controlled territory, function like a civil government. The Bible is saying both of them were controlled and under the influence of the devil. So the 2 horns gives us this dual capacity. And today, in the remnant of the land that it has, from 16,000 square miles, it now encompasses an area smaller than the Queen's Park Savannah. A little more than half of the size of the Queen's Park Savannah is still there today. The biggest single piece of the territory. You can go and watch, and if you look at the television around Easter and Christmas time, you see this huge circular courtyard that can accommodate about 100,000 people. That's the single largest space. So that the new empire, whenever it emerged, now established a relationship with this entity, who was, what it says here, was able to influence the civil authority to persecute the church. And if you remember the Inquisition wasn't only done by Jesuits and other people. Soldiers from the state also were responsible. If the church declared you anathema, soldiers from the civil authority could now arrest you and put you to death if the case, they warranted it, if you refuse to recant. This beast that looked like a lamb has some powers that it seems to refer to a future time. It says in verse 13 of Revelation 13. But verse 12 it says, and he exercises all the power of the first beast before him, and causes the earth and them who dwell therein to worship the beast. And worship is not simply, to pray to, but to accept its edicts and policies, etc. without question, which essentially is what happens with worship. You don't question, basically, what happens. And he causes the earth and them which dwell therein to worship the beast, whose deadly wound was healed. And verse 13, and he does great wonders, so that he makes fire to come down from heaven on the earth in the sight of men. And he deceives them who dwell on the earth by means of those miracles which he has the power to do in the sight of the beast, saying to them that dwell on the earth that they should make an image unto the beast, which had the deadly wound by a sword. And he had power to give life unto the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be killed. Now, some of this was done in the past before, but the specific things here, deceiving the whole earth with the miracles, I don't know that that has been established yet. So it seems that this is a future activity that is yet to come. And because of this capacity to call fire to come down from heaven, nobody has ever seen that in this day and age happen. And think of what the impact of that would be if you go there, for argument's sake, on Christmas or Easter, and it happens, and 100,000 people can testify, plus watch it on television. What impact that would have? The prestige of this lamb-like beast would be significantly enhanced. Now, the functions of this beast in both spheres, the religious or the spiritual, and in the civil authority, gives us an idea. Now, there's a belief that wearing one hat of the civil authority was necessary for the religious part to have to fully exercise its authority. It needed what is called, you needed the temporal authority or the earthly So they didn't want just to function in the spiritual sphere. They wanted a physical presence that they could control and do things over. So that they were able to use the power of the state to get part of this physical aspect of it, to exercise their physical power. And it says that make an image unto the beast. Now this is not referring to making statues necessarily. The first beast, remember, is a government. So if you make an image of a government, what you're doing essentially is replicating its structure, the structure of the government, following its policies, and the lamb-like beast, the papacy and the church. Now the papacy, in a sense, is different from the church. It rules over both the civil aspect, with the lands, etc., and the church. But when it functions in the civil capacity, it is independent of the church. So for example, when it grants accreditation to ambassadors, it isn't granting accreditation to the church. It is granting accreditation to the state. And when it sends out its papal nuncios, they don't come as priests to give you confession, etc., etc. They come as diplomats. They come as diplomats. And while they are priests, you don't go to a papal nuncio for confession and whatever else. The papal nuncio does with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and stuff like that. That's what he is. He's an ambassador. For the Vatican, it's the smallest state in the world. 110 acres, something like that. But it has this authority that mighty nation like the United States would want to have diplomatic relations with it. This is why it says it rules over the kings of the earth. So when you make an image to the beast, it is suggesting that you adopt how it functions. And if you go read, you will find that the church, the Catholic Church, formed its governmental structure almost in parallel with how the Roman Empire functioned. They function in the same kind of way. And if you notice how the selection takes place, you have all of these, various ranks, cardinals, etc., etc. And then they come down and they make the final. And you have priests, and then you have these people with different levels of authority over certain areas. For example, the whole Caribbean region was under one man, but he would be responsible for every other place in the Caribbean. That is how the Roman Empire was structured in its heyday. And he had power to give light to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak. Now, how does a government speak? It speaks, especially in that time, in the form of the edicts that it would issue. And in the case of this entity, it speaks in the form of what we call bulls, papal bulls, which is a document that is written by the church. And it distributes to all of its churches, all of its diplomats all around the world. And you have the form of communication. It speaks. So when the papal bull is established, this is almost like virtual law for all of the departments of this empire around the world. So that chapter 13 gives us this relationship between the empire and this little lamb, the lamb-like beast. And now we go into the heel beast. When it appeared on the scene, it did not reappear as the beast with 7 heads and 10 horns that we saw in Revelation 13. It came as the beast that we saw, or that we see in Revelation 17. So let's turn there. And verse 3. An angel now is dealing with John. It says, and he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. And I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet. And if you take a look at how the hierarchy of the lamb-like beast of this kingdom, how they dress, these are the colors that they represent: scarlet and purple. And decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, Christians, and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said to me, verse 7, why did you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that you saw was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. And here's the explanation he is giving. And here's the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goes into perdition. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and they that are with him are called and chosen and faithful. So what do we see here? A woman sit upon the scarlet-colored beast. The woman had names full of blasphemy. The woman was also arrayed in purple and scarlet. So the beast was a scarlet-colored beast. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet. Now, woman is a symbol for a church. And in this aspect, there are some who would attempt to equate the little horn that we saw in Daniel, before whom the three German tribes fell. They seek to equate the woman here with the little horn. But you cannot do that, because a horn never is used to represent a church. So even though it is an entity, but the entity is not the church. We saw that the entity was functioning in its temporal capacity, meaning its earthly possession. It was functioning as a state. And we saw the existence of a state. 16,000 square miles at one time it occupied. So in Daniel, it was functioning not as a church, but as a state, a civil government, attempting to regain its power. But in Revelation, we see a woman, and the woman is the symbol for a church. So what is happening in Revelation is we see now the other aspect of it, the religious aspect. The woman is sitting upon this scarlet-colored beast, and this beast had 7 heads and 10 horns. Again, it's similar to the beast of Revelation 13, having 7 heads and 10 horns. But the beast in Revelation 13 was not described as being scarlet colored. The beast of Revelation 17 is scarlet colored, because it is now the Holy Roman Empire. Revelation 13 was the pagan part. This is now the Holy Roman Empire. Has the same colors of the church. And the woman sitting on this beast, it suggests now that she has the ability to direct the activity. The same way some have attempted to say you have a rider on a horse or some other animal that you can ride. Dictates where it can go. A horse is far more powerful than a human being, but a small person can direct the horse wherever you want it to go and to do the things that you need it to. If you need it to jump, it jumps. You know how to do that. So that the woman now has this power to direct the empire. And you see the having gold, it's decked with gold and purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup. So it appears to be fairly wealthy. And the smallest state in the world has its own bank and owns billions of dollars of property all around the world. Now, it presents a little bit of a mystery. It says, the angel has said, the beast that you saw was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit. And that is a puzzle. Now, one person said that it later described that the beast that was and is not and yet is. One person described it as, in that phase that it was seen, because this explanation that is being given is from the perspective of one is. Because the angel told him, 5 are fallen, 1 is, and the other is not yet come. So he's speaking from the perspective of the one that is, because 5 have fallen, they don't exist again. 1 is, the other one is not yet. So he's not speaking from the future, the one that is come. He's saying the one is present, so that the explanation now is being given from the perspective of the one that is. And the explanation is that the one that is was so weak by comparison with the previous empires that it was deemed as it was and is not and yet is, at least not in name only. But when you really look into it, this particular sixth one that is really has significant power. And in terms of military power, it probably was more powerful than every other empire before it, in terms of its capacity. But we will get into that a little bit later. Let's see now what these 7 heads represent. Because remember, it had 7 heads. It says 5 are fallen. One gentleman somehow managed to confuse heads with beasts. So the 5 that are fallen, he said, represented Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, pagan Rome, papal Rome, and atheistic communism. Now, first of all, communism is not a system, not a state. Communism is a philosophy, but 5 of these were fallen. What does that mean? Now remember, the heel beast is now the Holy Roman Empire. We saw 3 kings in this empire, the German ones, sequentially being removed. And now you're going to have 7 kings come one after the other in sequence. Let me read again from this document, The History of Europe and the Church. That was produced by the Worldwide Church of God. It says, by 554, the Gothic hold is completely broken, and the reconquest of the Italian peninsula is regained. Italy is now firmly in Justinian's hands. Italy is again an integral part of the empire. The 3 barbarian Aryan kingdoms have been uprooted and swept away. The deadly wound of AD 476 is healed. The ancient Roman Empire is revived, restored under the scepter of Justinian. Both legs of the empire, east and west, are now under his personal control. History will memorialize his great achievement as the Imperial Restoration. It is a milestone in the story of humankind. Many territories have been regained, and during his reign, Justinian has doubled the empire's extent. So, Justinian now restored his empire, and it is now to be called the Holy Roman Empire. When Justinian eventually died,